Don't worry, I won't keep you long, but I have to remind you, we're going to be publishing the first season of Aquilo as a real, physical, can hold in your hands book. But we need your help to get it done. Head on over to aquilo.com/book to get all the details, including a few surprises. Aquilo Season 7 Chapter 10 Chekhov's Shot. I'm not always great at displays of social grace. Sure, I can whip out the customer service smile when I need to, and I've learned to weaponize good humor and civility. However, I often find myself with little time or patience for the smaller things. I'll leave an awkward gathering without saying goodbye, or I might dodge efforts to engage in proper conversation by giving short, close-ended answers. If I have something on my mind, or feel like there are more important concerns that demand my attention, I can be a little distant, if not completely walled off. It's why I appreciate working with Stefan, who also doesn't dance the social ballet, and why I appreciate friends who understand where I'm coming from. And while my conversation with Detective Julien Lamour was not only captivating, but also rather important, I barely bother thanking him for his company before breaking into a jog. Behind me, I leave 2 boxes of breathtaking pecan caramel brioche, my cafe, and perhaps even more answers about the Pilvists and their god. If I had an umbrella or a bag, I would have dropped them. Like a thirsty man at the sight of an oasis, I lose myself in the mirage before me. The unexpected gift of something longed for and denied. Mystical mysteries be damned, there are more answers to other, deeper questions ahead of me. You see, I might not always be delicate with how I walk the social gardens, occasionally trampling the grass and stepping off the gravel path, but I take care of my flowers. When I see one I haven't been able to water in months, I don't walk but rather run to correct the situation. It takes a minute for me to close the distance. The white Pilvist robes hang heavy on my frame, limiting my stride and making each step its own struggle. When I do get close enough to the massive red tractor trailer, I'm already out of breath and sweating like a bain-marie. I can see him. Cut from the clear sky behind him, he towers over the rest of Aquilo's locals. His shoulders remind me of how, despite his hard work, Eric isn't even in the same weight class as Gulliver. Arms wrapped around a heavy box, his muscles bulge with the effort, dredging up memories of how terrified I was of him when we first met. When he finally spots me, his eyes narrow with worry rather than recognition. He steps back, apprehensive of what I might do once I get close enough. Not that he's wrong to do so. If it weren't for the cardboard box he holds, I may very well have thrown myself at him. It's more than that, though. Not only am I some crazy woman sprinting in his direction, but he looks at me as if I were some stranger, and it takes me a moment to realize why. Sure, it's been a minute since we last spoke, but also I don't think his brain was prepared to see me wearing the blinding white of the great cloud. "Miriam?" he asks, taken aback by my appearance. And what an appearance it is! Catching a glimpse of my reflection in Pearls of Wisdom's window, it becomes obvious why he might have some worries. If I have to be honest, I wouldn't have trusted me either. "Gulliver! What do you do with a running start when the ground suddenly disappears from beneath your feet? What do I expect Gulliver to do as I approach and he finally recognizes me?" Unfortunately, I don't get to find out the answer to that question. My momentum isn't stopped by my massive friend greeting me with open arms. It is instead brought to a sudden halt while colliding into another pedestrian. Someone short and bony, covered in soft wool and knitwear. She stepped out from her shop just as I was going to pump the brakes on my approach. Pushing the door with her hip, a box, much smaller than Gulliver's, held in her arms, she takes one step back and onto my path. Couldn't have asked for a more apt metaphor to our relationship, could I? She wandering blindly into my way, stepping between me and a dear friend. There I sit, white robes smeared with dust and dirt from the sidewalk, the palm of my hand scraped and pockmarked with tiny pebbles. Pulling myself to a sitting position, I can see her opposite me, lying amongst the vestiges of her now open box. Quick to anger and with little respect for circumstances, she'll soon be blaming me for the accident, spitting venom in my direction from between gritted teeth. Skeins of yarn in muted colors litter the sidewalk, along with packages of needles scattered about. As I brace for the onslaught, I remind myself that soon Ophelia will be out of my hair. "You useless waste of skin," she starts, each word spat out like venom. Already, I'm cooking a comeback. While I tire of these childish sparring matches, I don't have it in me to back down and be the better person. The moral high ground looks great in brochures, but it's a cold and unsatisfying place to visit. Better to stay down in the trenches and trade blows. But she stops herself. The initial barb is cut short, leaving so little to grab onto that I can't find purchase with which to retaliate. I don't have to wonder long what could have possibly stopped Ophelia from partaking in her second favorite hobby. Gulliver, with a deep sigh, puts down his box before extending both arms in our direction. Like a mighty oak lowering his branches, he offers us a hand back to our feet, chivalry we both accept. For a split second, Ophelia seems to get the fight back in her, but it doesn't last. The frown, so practiced and long carved into her features, suddenly relaxes. It's as if someone cut a string holding her face in that angry position, allowing her to sigh and soften. "Ophelia?" Gulliver asks as she yanks her hand from his. "Never mind," she mumbles, bending down to pick up her yarn. When Detective Lamore spotted Gulliver's truck in the distance, I could tell it was parked in front of Ophelia's. I've always hated their relationship, with good reason. Even now, he's wearing one of her knit shirts stretched over his body. I knew I'd run into her, and yet that didn't dampen my enthusiasm, the pure joy of seeing Gulliver again. Whatever it was that took him away for so long, whatever remained lingering between us, it weighed little in the balance against how glad I was for his return. Oh, it wasn't nothing. Like that spoonful of vanilla extract, it has a noticeable presence at the edge of my taste buds, but it doesn't make or break the recipe. Mother knows I shouldn't care how Ophelia looks, utterly defeated and bereft of her usual fight. I don't want to care. But apparently callous disregard for the pain of others isn't as much a part of my repertoire as I thought it was. I'm glad she's leaving Aquilo. I don't care that she's losing her business. Hell, even knowing that it hurts Gulliver in the process doesn't bother me. She doesn't deserve him. After seeing her in the forest, though, clawing at the portal, something changed. My fingers close over soft polyester yarn the shade of strawberry meringue. I keep my touch light, worried that I might stain the product before dusting off any pebbles or dirt that might have stuck. Satisfied, I toss it into the box before grabbing a couple of packages of knitting needles. In less than a minute, Ophelia's box is full again. The contents are disorganized, sticking out from the top in a haphazard pile, but otherwise it's as if nothing ever happened. All we'll have to remember the incident are the scrapes on our hands and the bruises on our butts. All the while, Gulliver watches us like a dutiful parent, monitoring his children as they do their chores. I avoid eye contact with her, afraid of what I'll see there. Resentment for the help provided? Anger for how little I did to make up for the collision? Sorry. For a solid second, I'm not sure who spoke the word. Part of me hopes it was Ophelia. Failing that, I pray that we simply said it at the same time, turning that awkward moment into a slightly comedic one. Wouldn't that be a good way to diffuse the situation so I can go back to greeting my friend? But it was me. Somehow I apologized. A spell, I think. It has to be some sort of enchantment. Something in the yarn or my proximity to Gulliver's sweater. A magic spun or woven that subverts my will. It's fine, she answers, surprised but tired. It's fine. No spell, no magic, no enchantment. Why don't you guys catch up? Ophelia tells Gulliver. I'll go pack a few more boxes. There's no trailer hitched to Gulliver's truck. The only spare room they have to move Ophelia's possessions is whatever's behind the driver's seat, and if memory serves, that's not much. It'll take them 1,000 trips to empty Ophelia's store and home, a funeral procession each time. Maybe this is just an initial trip. Maybe they'll rent a moving van for the rest. Then what? She moves out of town? In with Gulliver? Do they ever come back to Aquilo? Is this the last time I get to hang out with him? Hey, I interrupt. You guys finish up. When you're done, come and grab something to eat at the cafe. We can catch up there with something sweet to nibble on and something warm to sip. Before he can answer, I go in for a quick hug, squeezing him as hard as my arms will allow. I'm not weak, not by any stretch, but it feels like trying to crush a rock. My soul floods with relief when the gesture is returned. Sounds good, he answers, his voice deep as ever. Won't take long anyway. I smile and let go. He isn't quite lost to me yet. Walking into the Aquilo Cafe, I feel the unfamiliar strain of my cheekbones under my eyes. I'm not grinning, not quite yet, but there's a tired smile on my face that hasn't been there in a long time. At least, not for more than a moment here and there. My mood is further sweetened when I see the 2 boxes of pecan and caramel brioche on the counter. Good old Detective Lamore couldn't just take them home, of course. That would not be the act of a gentleman, after all. I'll have to thank him somehow, though that might be difficult if he subsists on a diet of faith and magic seeds now. I can almost feel them rattling in my pocket. Those seeds that every other pilvist swallows after the ceremony. They look so innocuous. A rich brown in color, they remind me of cocoa, but in the shape of oversized apple seeds instead. Looking at Olivia's empty stool, a shadow comes over me. Not only is my friend no longer here, but with her also goes her knowledge. If anyone would have an opinion on the seeds from the Pilvis ceremony, it would be her, and it would be an opinion I could trust. The lunch rush isn't in full swing quite yet, but that storm is on the horizon. Beyond the more subtle hints, there's the obvious signs. Stefan is folding napkins, which he puts on saucers and covers with empty cups, ready to be filled. The delicious aroma of ground coffee is pulled towards the front door, reporting a freshly made batch to better handle the afternoon customers. With effort, I pull the white robes over my shoulders, taking a moment to inspect the damage from my fall. Not bad, I think. Nothing a thorough scrubbing won't solve. A few threads look weathered from the concrete, but none of the wear and tear will be apparent after a good wash. You might want to put that thing away, Annabelle suggests from her seat at the counter. There are no mugs in front of her, nor empty plates that might have once offered food. Instead, it's her books and notepad, along with a colorful collection of pens and pencils. More mixology homework. Not on my account, she adds, noticing my raised eyebrow and sneering lip. Pete's coming over to try all the culinary innovation she missed out on before leaving town. I purse my lips and sigh through my nostrils. Never a fan of being told what to do, I still can't deny that Annabelle has a point. Maybe I'm comfortable parading around town as a pilvist. To hell with anyone's opinion of my life choices. But Petunia's history is a little more fraught. If I expect her to keep opening up about the cult, it's probably best I don't look like I'm a part of it. Despite, being kind of a part of it. Besides, it needs to go in the wash, so it gets tossed in with the dish towels. Future Miriam will handle this in due time. I slip my fresh bounty of pilvist seeds into my apron pocket and go back to the dining room to assess the Aquilos situation. Those few seconds I spend, fist at my hips as I stand in the doorway to the kitchen, are some of the best of any day. I feel like a captain on her ship, looking over the horizon, tasting the salt in the wind, and judging the waves that crash over the water. As always, my second-in-command is handing over the helm of a well-oriented vessel. Customers look happy, and apart from a baking display that needs restocking, all is shipshape. Gabrielle and Irene, two of Aquilo's children, rush through the front door long enough to claim free samples. A good way as any of getting rid of the box of brioche. They nearly run over Michael, who's busy brushing off powdered drywall from his overalls, wary of dragging filth into my establishment. "Gulliver's back in town," I blurt out to Annabelle. Like a record scratch, my words bring all within earshot to a standstill. Even Stefan, my rock in a tempest, pauses long enough to raise an eyebrow. "Are you kidding?" Annabelle lurches forward in her excitement. "How is he?" "He's fine. I didn't get a good look at his hand, but he was carrying boxes and giving hugs as if nothing happened." "Hugs, you say? Wait, what boxes? Why isn't he here?" I can tell from the look in her eyes that Annabelle's already figured it out, but I expect the reality to be as upsetting to her as it was to me. "He's helping Ophelia pack." Both of us are keenly aware of the dent in the wood of my countertop, mere inches from Annabelle's arm, where Gulliver shattered his hand. He was wearing one of Ophelia's scarves at the time, and under her influence. "Why?" Annabelle is visibly upset with this turn of events. Leaning on the counter, her fingers find their way to the groove left behind by Gulliver's massive fist. I can feel her anger as I would the spice from a particularly aggressive baba ganoush. It's in me too, burning from within, almost as hot as the day it happened. It's that very fury that pushed me to set the Inquisition on Ophelia. She healed him, I think. I can't imagine how else he's already doing so much better. "You could have done that. That man needs some sense smacked into him." "Good news," I say, gathering cups and coffee grounds. "You can ask him yourself. They're coming over later." "Wait, what?" She looks like someone who's been called on their bluff or caught off guard. It's only as I go over my own sentence that I realize the source of her shock. Like a storm cloud, I used one word with enough weight to bring down thunder and lightning. They. I didn't even realize as I spoke. My jaw drops, a preamble to my weak attempt at an explanation, but I never get a chance to speak, leaving both of us to wonder if Gulliver will be showing up alone. "You could drive a van through that," Petunia says, pointing at my open mouth. "What did you do to her?" Round cheeks perked up, pushing her eyes into a squint, she elbows Annabelle to take a seat at the counter. Pete looks dressed for travel, baggy overalls atop a cozy sweater, her puffy hair tied in a ponytail, and a denim backpack over her shoulders. "Nothing," Annabelle explains. "But Gulliver's in town, which is a lot to process." "Is it?" Pete says. "Didn't even know he was gone, though I wouldn't mind seeing that fine specimen again. Take a mental postcard home with me." Of all the things I like about Petunia, her ability to diffuse situations, sometimes without even realizing it, nears the top of my list. It takes all of Annabelle's efforts not to laugh. Meanwhile, I can't even find it in me to be upset should Ophelia accompany Gulliver. "What would Fred say?" I ask, reminding her that there's a boyfriend waiting for her at home. "Nothing. My man knows his place. I don't stop him from playing games with scantily clad avatars. He can indulge my window shopping. It's healthy, I swear. Mind if I get some coffee? And an assortment of your most decadent pastries. Something worth regretting later." I oblige, making sure to prepare a little box of extras, hoping they make it all the way to Fred. Poor guy deserves a treat for putting up with Pete's absence. And her presence, too, I suppose. I listen to my two friends objectify Gulliver for a few minutes while I prepare panini sandwiches for customers as they walk in. Most ask for something else, but when they hear of the spicy chicken and guacamole, more than half change their order. It doesn't take long before Annabelle starts to talk about her roommate, my brother, describing him in uncomfortable ways that demand my intervention. "Don't make me cut you off," I threaten, pulling at their cups. "We're just having fun," Annabelle says, before whispering that she'll send photos to Pete later. All of it is in good fun, and it's pleasant to bathe in pointless banter and semi-wholesome jokes. However, as I move back and forth, taking orders, spreading guacamole on bread, and pushing down the panini press in the kitchen, I can feel my apron getting heavier and heavier. The strap at the back of my neck digs into my skin, and my back aches with the effort. It's the seeds. I pull one out, and it's no heavier in my hands than it was the minute Ian dropped it into my palm. The dull coloring on its surface says nothing of its divine origin. When I walk back into the dining room, the seed is still in my hand, with my eyes still caressing its shell. "You're still going," Pete says, her tone as serious as I've ever heard it. "I am." She reaches to pluck the seed from my hand. No anger, no hurry, just a knowing teacher picking up a problem sheet to look at my solution. She rolls it between her fingers, features soft with recollection and familiarity. I imagine this seed is an old friend to Pete, one with mixed history. "This is it, you know," she holds up the seed. "That's the only miracle you'll get from her. A seed worth about 2,000 calories with all the vitamins and nutrients a healthy human body needs. But you're not eating them?" Gently, I take the seed back from her. She doesn't fight to keep it. If there ever was an attachment to that aspect of the cult, Petunia has long since purged it. "Why would I want to replace all this?" I wave my hand at the whole of my coffee shop, baked goods, sandwiches, and all, with a seed. Petunia smiles, comforted by this. Like Gulliver to me, I'm not quite lost yet. "They'll prey on your needs in desperation, Miriam," she explains. "And they mean well, but you're not going to get the miracle you want." I pocket the seed, allowing it to join the other two, glad that they've gone back to their original weight. Something else has replaced their pull on my shoulders, though. Hopelessness. "Some goddess they worship." Petunia opens the box I prepared for Fred, stealing one of the caramel pecan brioche I snuck in there and stuffing most of it into her mouth. She chews for a few moments, half swallowing the amalgam of sugar and crust before giving an answer. "Well," Pete says, plucking a buttery flake off her chin, "there's only so much you can expect from a captive goddess." She raises her eyebrow and leans in, like a conspirator about to impart a dirty secret. "But what if," she asks, before stuffing the rest of the pastry between her teeth, "someone were to release her?" By the time the dinner rush comes around, Petunia has missed her bus. She quickly arranges for another type of transportation through an app on her phone, but an hour before Stefan's shift is due to end, she has to call and cancel that too. She tells us of tales of her and Fred struggling to find an apartment in Trois-Rivières and spending 2 weeks living out of a tent before landing a sweet studio with a view on the river. In return, Annabelle recounts her adventures in Montreal, bussing tables at taverns and pubs while chatting up bartenders and mixologists when she found them. Annabelle tells us of the legend of Sambuca Sam, a 68-year-old, seven-fingered juggler and moonshiner who took her on a journey of local breweries. She speaks highly of a woman named Jane Brimstone, who boasts to be at the epicenter of Montreal's gin renaissance. And while the claim is dubious, it's apparently hard not to tire to every inch of the periphery of the gin industry. Each of them sounds like a wizard in their own right, or at the very least people with the adequate level of mystique to be wizards. All the while, I managed to savor my friends' lives while keeping the details of mine to a minimum. Not that I don't have tall tales of my own to share, but it's soothing to be able to take that step back. With enough noise, I don't have to think too much, and with enough separation from myself, I can almost forget my more pressing problems. It works so well that even Gulliver's promised visit manages to slip from my mind. Without permission, and facing no objection, Annabelle has made her way to the kitchen and poured each of us a little lemon cocktail that is, in her words, sure to wake us up. It tastes like limoncello, though I swear I'd finished the bottle making cupcakes not 2 weeks ago. By the time Gulliver does show up, making a weak attempt to be discreet, we've already closed up shop and given up on Petunia going home before morning. Pete's boisterous voice and Annabelle's excited commentary melt into complete silence as the chimes sing their song. Strange enough to have Gulliver back, the circumstances of his absence still a physical scar on the Aquilo Cafe, but he brings with him some unexpected baggage, or semi-expected. Apologetic in his body language, Gulliver holds the door open. It's difficult to tell what he's sorry for most, interrupting our laughter and revelry, or the +1 we all would have preferred not to see. Ducking under his arm and giving him the briefest yet sweetest smile, Ophelia drags herself into my cafe for what I pray will be the last time. She looks in my general direction, barely acknowledging my presence, before choosing a table at which to sit. The umbilical is severed, but threads of flesh and a trail of blood remains, connecting Ophelia and Gulliver. She'll allow him to visit, but not without supervision. "Is this cool?" Gulliver asks, knowing full well that it isn't, but also that I'm likely to lie. "It's fine," I say, his presence outweighing the inconvenience and discomfort of having Ophelia in the Aquilo again. He smiles, genuine pleasure mapping the features of his otherwise tired face. Hands finding a place in his pockets, he walks on over, ignoring his girlfriend and ingratiating himself into our little murder of crows. "I remember you," he tells Petunia as he sits down. "Obviously," she answers, leaning on her elbow to savor every inch of him. "I'm unforgettable." The interaction draws out an eye roll from Ophelia, which I catch from the corner of my eye, and with that, I know we're going to have a decent time. With a fresh topic cracked open, we jump right back into things. Starting from the Donselites, then back to Annabelle's adventures. Petunia, while punctuating everything she says to Gulliver with a friendly punch to his arm, assures him that she's just having fun. She frequently appends little anecdotes of her own happy home life, each time boiling up a fresh compliment for Fred to the surface. Despite the feather-light subjects we nibble on, it's difficult to completely ignore the putrescent piece of meat in the middle of the dish. The whole conversation feels like savoring crisp, buttery vegetables and creamy garlic mashed potatoes, while trying to pretend that there aren't flies and maggots crawling all over the steak on the same plate. But it's there, isn't it? Maybe I'll notice the stiffness of his fingers as I hand over a plate of chocolate delicacies, or Petunia will comment on the quality of his sweater. Each time, like catching a whiff of spoiled meat, I'll gag a little and quickly back away from the topic. Maybe Petunia will ask about where he got that shirt, and I'll change the topic to croissants. Or Gulliver will look at the damage to my counter and attempt to offer an apology, but I'll have to cut him off and say it gives character to the place. But there's no avoiding it, not forever. No matter how nauseating, no matter how sickening the prospect, there's no finishing the meal without taking a bite of that rotten, maggot-riddled steak. Annabelle knows it too. She tries to avoid the topic, for my benefit. Every time she'll cut Petunia off to talk about caramel pecan brioche, or insert herself into one of Gulliver's stories to talk about her trip to Montreal, she'll throw a look in my direction. I want to know, but I don't know how to let the conversation get there, and I don't want to ask the question. Not in any natural way. I hate to sound like a drunk teenager, I say, taking advantage of a short lull in the conversation. But when are we all going to be together like this again? The whole Donselites gang. We should do a shot in honor of the good old days. The idea delights Pete, who seems always eager for the next offbeat thing to do and is always hungry to bond with friends. Gulliver looks a little confused. He knows I'm not that big a drinker to begin with. If the spirits aren't part of a cake or fancy sauce, I'm usually not one to go out of my way for alcohol. Annabelle, though, knows what I'm cooking, and judging from the look in those blue eyes of hers, I'm not sure she likes it. "Are you sure?" she asks with a frown and a smile. "It's getting a little late." "No one's driving tonight," I reassure. "And don't you want to show off that drink you made for Eric and me?" My purpose now made obvious, Annabelle allows for a moment of silence to hang between us. In those precious few seconds, there's a question that's being asked with calm insistence. While not complicated, it carries the weight of circumstances. "Are you sure?" I am. Maybe it's the lightheadedness of having a lemon cocktail coursing through my tired veins. Or maybe the strain of the last few days has made me reckless and foolhardy, but yes, I am sure. With a smile and a nod, I give Annabelle permission to be a witch. She hasn't gone long, the simplicity of the drink leaving little time for the rest of us to broach another topic. When she's back, Annabelle is carrying a serving platter of tiny glasses. With the support of my blessing, she's now fully consumed by her role as bartender. All right, she announces, giddily spinning the platter on her palm before setting it down on the counter. It's the first time I see Annabelle put so much flair on her mixology. She leans into the spectacle, sliding each shot glass on the countertop so it comes to rest in front of its intended recipient. One for Petunia, one for Gulliver, one for me, one for herself, and one that she puts in front of an empty stool. "Ophelia," she calls out, making my stomach sink. "Join us for a toast?" The little knitter looks up from her current work, peering over a loose-knit shawl of bright yellow yarn. The needle in her left hand is held at an awkward angle, a handicap from her broken finger, but it doesn't seem to slow her down much. "No," Ophelia answers, leaving little room for debate. But that's not knowing how Annabelle or Petunia's mind work. "Well," Petunia complains, "that's just rude. You don't need to drink, but the least you can do is join us for the toast." "Right," Annabelle adds. "Refusing hospitality, that's just asking for a bad omen." That last one hits home for Ophelia. For all our differences, we both seem to worship at similar altars. Our paths, while following separate roads, present familiar scenery. To thumb our noses at proper hospitality isn't just bad manners, it's tempting fate. It simply isn't done. Defeated, she puts down her shawl and pushes herself up to her feet. The head of William, her cat, pops out of the bag to protest, but remains ignored. Ophelia straightens her shirt and forces her lips into some semblance of cheer. A forced smile and the manufactured enthusiasm don't suit her well, but they're enough to bring her to the counter. We all stand in front of our drinks, ready for someone to say a few words. It should be me, I realize that, but I can't stop thinking of that shot glass in front of Ophelia and why it's there. I decide that I don't want her here anymore. I don't want Ophelia to take that shot. Picking up my shot glass, I try to come up with something, anything, to keep that drink from reaching her lips. I raise my glass, holding it above my head, and take a few steps so that I'm standing in front of Ophelia. To new beginnings, I guess. It's not much of a toast, and I allow my words to slur some as I say it. Then, in what must have been some of the worst acting ever performed by a human being, I pretend to lose my balance and catch myself on the countertop. No one would ever believe this to be an accident, and I have to accept that. But better to look the malicious fool than let Annabelle's one mixology trick work its sorcery on Ophelia. As I slam my arm on the counter, I make a point to sweep my hand in order to spill Ophelia's glass, sending it sprawling to the tiled floor and splashing her in the process. Maybe her outrage and natural disdain of me will make her think that I'm just that much of a klutz. Surely she already holds that opinion, and this sorry bit of theatrics will serve to confirm it. "Mother skirts," she complains, raising her arms up in surprise. "Oh my," I say, adding to my pathetic act. "I'm sorry. Let me get you something to wipe that off." I grab a handful of napkins, and satisfied that my mission is accomplished, I start wiping down the counter. All will be fine, I believe. An angry Ophelia should be seen as a bonus, but at least we won't get any mystical confessions out of her. It's tempting to cancel the whole thing, put an end to what was a bad idea to begin with. But the situation goes further off the rails. "Here," Gulliver says, sliding his shot glass to Ophelia. "I've had a drink already, and I need to move the truck." Glad, not for the shot, but to see my transparent interference sabotaged, Ophelia takes the shot in her left hand. The clear liquid spills a few drops on her fingers as they shake, but enough remains for her to drink. "To new beginnings," she says, mocking my own toast. Before I have a chance to interrupt, she slams the shot to the back of her throat and swallows. Petunia looks confused and Gulliver looks satisfied. Meanwhile, Annabelle is obviously shocked and dismayed. It wasn't supposed to be like that. Obviously, Ophelia isn't much of a drinker. Her face contorts into a rictus of disdain and disgust, the shot struggling to make it to her stomach and burning all the way there. Her lips purse and her eyes water, but she manages to gain back some level of composure before putting the glass down. Through the discomfort, she still finds a way to give me a look. Her lips part, and I expect her to say something along the lines of, "Nice try," or "That'll show you." Something to put me in my place for failing to keep the drink out of her hands. But that's not accounting for Annabelle's one trick. What does come out of Ophelia's mouth is an admittance I've been waiting years to hear, and the explanation for so many acts of pettiness and hatred. It's a confession so harsh, even she seems shocked by it. "Doris Dufour killed my parents." Aquilo is written by J.F. Dubow and narrated and produced by me, Amy Frost. If you enjoyed this podcast and would like to hear more, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast platform. Want to support the show? Buy us a coffee. Go to ko-fi.com/Aquilo to donate. Aquilo has a Patreon. Visit patreon.com/Aquilo for details. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram under the username Aquilo.